Welcome to Well Said, a podcast produced by the Well Community Church, hosted by Mary Graham and Tori Mayo. Our desire is to give you the knowledge and confidence to apply a biblical perspective to various topics.
Hey, yo, what up?
Hello, gentlemen.
Gentlemen, I like it.
What's up, Mary?
Uh-huh.
What's up? Okay. That's funny. Welcome to the next episode. Just so y'all know, I still sound sick because we record
A couple at a time.
multiple episodes in the same day. So it ain't like I got the itis. I'm just still sick. That's it.
Oh, you got the itis.
Yeah, it's been around for a while.
Not true. Whatever you said right now.
It's already been a while.
I haven't
so,
heard.
yeah.
But the Lord is a healer, as we just learned.
Yes.
Okay.
We've got an amazing guest today.
Yeah. I'm actually really excited.
Literally, since the beginning of Well Said's inception, I have actually wanted you to be on this
facts.
podcast. So,
No pressure.
it's an honor, my friend.
I appreciate you, Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Appreciate you,
have
Mary
the illustrious,
Ooh.
industrious. When we go stand in the kingdom, I know that a lot of us are like, ooh, the Charles Spurgeons and like the, like, man, like what about when I meet like the Apostle John?
No, boost it. Keep going. No, you done. You in now. Let's go, baby.
But we have somebody who I think Charles Spurgeon is going to take off his crown.
Whoa!
And before he throws it at Jesus' feet,
Oh, I'm done now. No, I'm backing off of this. No, stop
he's
that.
going to be like, with Mr. Josh Guerrero, he's all right.
Yeah, let's just stop there. Stop there. That's ridiculous, bro. That's ridiculous.
The new Prince of Preachers. That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
Oh, that's great.
Hey, real quick, before we get into we do a little icebreaker every week, so we're going to ask you that. Before we get into that, just for y'all's context. So Josh was our first church planter at the Well. He planted Refuge Church. We'll actually hear a lot more about that, so I'll let him go into that detail. But was also one of my best friends. Josh
was.
Let me give context.
You done did it now.
Let me give context. Dang. I was about to say
The context is in the sentence. It's called present tense and past tense. That's the context. The context was is and was. That's the context. That's all I needed. All right. My gosh, bro.
All right. Well, let me change this little icebreaker real quick to know. Josh was with the Well at a really difficult time in, I would say, my story. The Well story has had several difficult moments, and at some piece of this, there was a part of that where it turned really difficult. But for me personally, there was just a lot of hardship, and I feel like Josh stepped in and was my first real ministry partner that I would call a friend, in full-time ministry in this setting. I had other friends obviously before that, but to walk through life at this moment with Josh. It's funny because yesterday I was looking for something for us and was just scrolling through text messages and just cracking up, yo. Josh is a funny dude, so we're probably gonna laugh a lot today. But I feel like Josh really helped sustain me. And then when our next really hard ministry moment came around, Josh was the first person I called. And so I would consider Josh both here's why I use the word was, and I ain't just trying to retract myself.
Let's see how he
Because I would say that he was a friend, and in some ways turned into not just a friend, but even a pastor of mine in some ways. And so you're welcome. You're welcome. So get your
little bro.
I'm not gonna lie. You redeemed it. I don't know if that's what you set out to do. You either are, that was very thoughtful and I appreciate it, or you're a master manipulator. One of the two is true. One of the two is true. I'm gonna assume it's the first and say thank you.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Right.
We'll take it.
Yes. So I'm really excited to have him on. Excited for y'all to meet him and hear him.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
for sure.
Here's a little...
Hold on.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, actually, let's do is this the icebreaker thing?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, great. So you have a ton of secret talents, okay? For example, you're a phenomenal musician. And most people don't really know that unless, I know you've had to lead some of your contacts, but ain't nobody know that for a while. And it's bro, you was up here playing with some real people, okay? So a ton of secret talents. What's a talent that you have that most people don't know? I have a follow-up right after you answer it.
I think because it takes place at my home, this is at our church, this has become, I think, pretty standard knowledge because people are they be calling me now for this. But I, in the past several years, have developed an amazing green thumb. Like, I mean, a wild green
Really?
thumb. I've walked into Home Depot and stuff and seen stuff on clearance that's dying and just been like, hey, I'll give you like $8 for that. And then just brought it back home, and it's gone from like dead to like, one of them was a fiddle leaf fig that was like maybe 18 inches tall, had one leaf, looking sick. I think it's in our living room right now. I think it's like 7 feet tall right now.
Hey.
And so like I as a result, I got into bonsai trees a few years ago, and I got like a little collection of bonsai trees.
I ain't gonna act like I know what that is. I don't know what that is. Dog.
You never seen the Karate Kid,
bro?
No, I haven't.
Not even. Hey, you know what's crazy? I was gonna be like, not even the one with Will Smith's kid. Let me try to make it connect to you a little bit more.
Yeah. No. Continue.
That's it. That's all I'll say.
Okay, my follow-up is, what's a talent that you don't have that you wish you did have? Okay.
Oh, man.
As you answer that, I'm like, so as you think about it, I'm like, that's wild, dog. That whole Charles Spurgeon thing I just said, I'm like, bro, that's true. I mean, you're the true gardener, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're the...
No, he's moving from really great friend to capping, and it's a little bit now. See, I'm
we gotta turn it down a little bit.
So a lot of like the other one of my main interests, and like you know this, you probably know this too, but it's like I'm obsessed with football, soccer. And but I didn't actually get into the sport. Like I know how to play basketball decently well because when I grew up, I was playing basketball. So like, but when I grew up, I was not into soccer like at all. It happened very much so like later on in life and X, Y, and Z. And as a result, I didn't spend those young years when you're practicing every day and X, Y, and Z. I didn't do that with the soccer ball, and so I don't really know how to play yet. Still, like I know. Let me say that I've been obsessed with this sport for like over a decade. So tactically, I know things like I can see what's going on when I'm watching it. But in terms of like a technical idea of like kicking a ball around and stuff like that, I'm absolutely trash, and it makes me sad.
Yeah.
So that's what
So you like
glory.
Stanley in basketball?
Huh?
You like Stanley in basketball, but in soccer?
Stanley.
In the office.
I'm not. I am an office guy like that.
You're
but
trying
I ain't
so
interacting with the office. I ain't interacting with the office like that in a minute. So I don't even.
I don't even watch The Office.
Which one is Stanley again?
He's a black dude, right?
I don't know. I don't watch
see
The
color, bro.
Office.
Okay. Yeah, that ain't okay. Well, let's get into
Everyone else who watches The Office.
He ain't the older black dude?
I think maybe
legit-
true. I'm simply saying I don't even know what you're talking about right now in reference to Stanley in basketball.
They played basketball, and Michael was like, all right, I got first pick, and I got Stanley because he was black.
Okay.
But he was terrible.
Yeah, I'll say.
So you like that with soccer?
Yeah, so I like that.
Okay.
Man, that was a good joke. And I just
Sorry,
I'm sorry,
man.
bro. I'm
I know
sorry,
people
bro.
are laughing in their
I ain't no
cars
Karate
listening
Kid.
to that.
Hey, you know what? But is that the end of the?
Yep.
I got to address something.
Okay.
All right, I heard the World Podcast stands on facts, so we're gonna stand on facts for a minute.
We did.
About a year and a half ago, was it 2 years
here we
ago?
go.
Where the last time I preached at the Well.
Yes, because
Okay.
we were still Westover.
Westover,
so it
yeah.
was-
Yeah, so
was fire.
I went there and I made a joke at the beginning of the sermon, bro, that for all them sneakerheads in that church, all right, that they got me to thank. All right, I may not be the prince of preachers, but at the Well, I'm the prince of sneakers. All right, so and then I heard through the grapevine.
This dude.
I heard on the streets, all right? Your boy got eyes everywhere, all right? I heard that you out there like, oh, it wasn't Josh, it was me. No,
That's cap. That's cap, bro. That's
Is that cap, bro?
When did I say that? When would I have said that?
Bro, you gotta address your soldiers, bro. That ain't on me, all right?
Somebody trying to gain clout with you, dog.
All right. I'm
Okay.
gonna say it.
I ain't never said that.
As long as you, because here's the thing. I don't believe that I was out here making everybody get into sneakers.
No.
I think the moment that the lead pastor does like kind of anything is influential in church.
Right.
You can go out there and say that you built the kingdom. I know that I'm the guy that was out there, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's one who comes after me who's Jordan 6s. I am not worthy to tie, bro. All right. I'm the voice in the wilderness that came before. All right, before you out there and built the kingdom.
Preparing the way.
I was preparing the way.
Preparing
you
the
made
way.
them cool, but I made them acceptable.
Okay.
All
I
right.
ain't never say it, dog. That's all I gotta say.
All right. I'm just letting y'all know.
If y'all can find the receipts, then I'll submit. And I'll be like,
submit to
I'll
that you
confess.
said. Okay, all right.
Okay.
All
and
right,
be like,
all right,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
That ain't true.
All right.
Because I'm staying
All right.
right now. No, bro, like you did. You did.
Okay.
right.
All
In
right.
fact, I would even say Josh is the one that helped me be like, hey, actually, this is okay.
You know what, bro? Now you're just gonna be all humble and stuff. I
No,
don't
bro,
like this, bro. Be
because I
petty
say that
with
all
me.
the time.
Just go with it.
I remember the house we were in. when we were like, when you were given that conversation, and I was like, dog, I have felt guilty for doing this because of what the culture has said at large, but I don't got to submit to that culture. I remember.
And one thing, let me just clarify. You all remember this was before The Last Dance. And everybody was in the sneakers, and it was very accessible. This was way before that. And so when I came in, it was the year of our Lord 2018.
Yes.
And there was that little.
Right?
No, it was my first day was January 1st, 2018.
Oh, January 1st. Okay.
And so, and so the response was like ridiculous. It was kind of crazy.
Yes.
So anyway, that's why if it wasn't attached to I don't know what camera we're gonna be on at the moment, but if it wasn't attached to so much personal persecution at the season in the moment, I wouldn't be as stingy about it. But it really was. It was ridiculous.
I feel it.
I was having to go through it during that time just so that I could rock what y'all are rocking. Y'all got Instagram pages about it and stuff. All that craziness, right? Your boy had to go through. I was on the chopping block for that for y'all, all right? So.
All right.
That's funny. Hey, okay, so let's jump in. So we're a church plant church. You're our first church plant. Okay, so sorry about that, first of all. So that means we done made like 14 mistakes that we fixed. All right. So Juhan, Travis, Zach, Sage, y'all are welcome. Okay.
Let's reap the fruit of your tears.
Reap the fruit. Reap the fruit. I was just trying, y'all. I was just trying. So tell us briefly, your story about planting, some history about Refuge so that our people get to know you some.
Yeah, man. So we are, obviously, like Tori mentioned, the first church plant that came out of the well. I guess for a little bit about me, for the sake of the relational aspect of it. I've been married to my incredible wife, Rachel, for almost 10 years. We got 3 kiddos. And when I came through at the well, my first day was January 1st, 2018, the year of our Lord. And I was about to have our first kid. We were about to have our first one. I remember when you were, sorry. Burping.
That could have been edited, but now it can't.
No, now it's in there. It's in there.
My life is unedited. No, so I remember that we were gonna go to like the membership meeting and announce me and everything like that. You remember I texted you that day and was like, hey, because my wife was teaching at a hood school in Austin at the time, and a little kid went up and punched her in the stomach, and then she had to go to the hospital. It was hard. Yeah, it came out hard. So we were in the hospital for the next like 12 hours.
Holy smokes, that's terrifying.
Yeah. And then somebody made a joke about it, being like, oh, his first day and he's already missing. And then Tori was like, well, his wife, who's pregnant, just got punched in the stomach. And like Tori came back and put the clamp on it. At that moment, I was like, this is my boy. This is my boy. This is my guy for life. So our story with planting is that after that, we spent 2 years at the well, like most of the residents do. We were sent out at the beginning of January 2020, which, if any of y'all know, recent history, was right at the beginning of COVID. None of us knew that was going to happen. I like to think in hindsight how much you've cared for your boy if you knew that we were going to go into a global pandemic. You'd been like, why don't you just sit back for a little bit?
For real?
Why don't you just hang out for another 6 months, year, 2 years?
For real?
But we were sent out. We got a few months in doing some team meetings and stuff like that. And then obviously the pandemic shut everything down. And so the first several years for us, very challenging because like 18 months went by and we didn't really get a chance to have any church services or nothing like that. And so that water's messing me up, bro. I'm sorry. Like I am starting to burp a lot now.
It's plain water, y'all. Ain't nothing in it.
It's not
He put
even
something
bubbly.
in it, bro. He put
It's not
something in
even
it.
bubbly.
Ain't even bubbly.
It's not bubbly. I gotta admit, it's not bubbly. So yeah, I think that while we were the first ones sent out, I think that our operational timeline is probably right in line with like Juhan's. That's how long we were kind of on the sidelines waiting. And that created another set of obstacles in the first 18 months of our operational time because it was just people just kind of trying to care for people and recover from everything that had happened. And so it was really tricky. But I think, so that's kind of like a short version of our history. It wasn't really until even just this past, like, 2023 where we were like, I think we're like in a good, healthy place now. Like, we're really excited to move forward, and our people are in a place where they feel like they've recovered, and new people and X, Y, and Z kind of just injecting life into the church and whatnot. So that's been great. And I think the first few years were challenging, but the recent times have actually been really encouraging, really fun. I think that they are more in line with what people expect out of church planting early on has been like the past 6 to 8 months for us. Just came a few years later.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I think to understand our church, you think the best thing to do is to understand like where we do church, and where we do church is in Southeast Austin, in a neighborhood called Dove Springs. If you don't know Dove Springs, it's a 78744. So at church, you would hear us say like the 44 a lot. And Dove Springs I think is close, or one of the neighborhoods that's as close to what we have is like hoods in Austin. We don't have hoods in the same way in Austin that other cities have hoods. Like there's not gang territories and X, Y, and Z, but there is like working class communities that often struggle with poverty, and alongside of poverty, you have things like petty crime and some violent crime. And so those are things that are very distinctly present in our community. Like almost half of the families with children are single parent homes. Most of those are single parent moms or single moms. A lot of addiction issues, stuff like that. And even like, even for us, like I live at the very edge of our neighborhood, the very edge of like the 78744. And we live in the nicest area of our area, the nicest neighborhood in our area. At least one of them. And even in like our own neighborhood, bro, like last year, a few blocks away, like someone unalived somebody, stabbing them. Our cars are like regularly rummaged through. At this point, I'm just like, nah, just leave it open, dude. Just take your valuables inside, leave it open, it's fine.
Don't break my window.
Don't break my window. You're welcome, dude. You are welcome to come in and mess with this, dude.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's the environment that we're in, and as a result, that's a lot of our vision for who we want to serve. And the church is very much built around the idea of serving and loving a diverse group of people, acknowledging that a huge demographic of that diverse group of people is going to be from this neighborhood. And so it's going to look a little different. And I think that's one of the things that I would say that I'm happy about in being first. I know that the church, I know that the Well has gone through, review and revision is a part of like organizational leadership. You review things, you revise it. It's how you progress organizationally. However, I'm glad that we were first, despite all the reviews and revisions that I'm sure have come. By the way, my time at the Well was great. I want to make sure that I say that. We're joking about it, but at the same time, I think that the other day I was writing a paper, and this is a little pin that I'll put right here, is that the other day I was writing, and I said in the paper, like, it's hard to communicate how much the Well has meant to me and my family, and that the Well has very much changed the trajectory of our lives, and has changed the trajectory of our church in terms of it existing in the way that it does. And I think a layer underneath that is very much like what you've meant to me and our relationship. And so I love you too, and I want to just say that I'm very grateful for you. Yeah. I think the places that the place that you've given me to call you and to work out things like leadership and ministry and all those, and just personal stuff too, like just talking and whatnot, has been extraordinarily encouraging for me. But I think what you're saying actually, when you started, is probably a layer that goes beyond that when it comes to like our relationship, because the space that you have given me where you trusted me with things like what you're talking about in terms of the hard seasons have been extraordinarily formational and confidence building for me, who I just turned 34 like a couple of weeks ago, happy birthday. I'm just joking.
I'm over here trying not to cry. These hormones are getting me right now.
I just turned 34. When you sent us out for Refuge, I was still 29. And even amongst our group of pastors at the Well, all the guys that have come after me are older than me. And so I think that for me, feeling that extraordinary insecurity of being a young man and having someone like you that I admire, respect, and love so much regularly put me in a place to be trusted, bro, was extraordinarily, it would fill my sails with wind, if you know what I mean. Like it gave me confidence when there were so many things to feel insecure about. And yeah, so I just want to tell you, bro, that I love you in that same way. Yeah. And I'm grateful for you in that same way. I meant to say it in the beginning, but I was really excited to talk about that sneaker thing. I wanted to put that right, bro. I want to put that mug right. All right? So,
that's funny. I love you, dog.
So I love you too. So I think that is very much so. When we were sent out, I think that I'm glad that we were the first ones, primarily because there was a big question as the first local church plants about whether we were going to be just another expression of the Well.
Right.
And I think that had we been closer to the Well's vision of church and the demographics that the church, that the Well reaches and whatnot, had we been closer to that, I think that it would have created that question sustainably moving forward. But I think because we were very different, like our vision was different. The first coffee shop we had our interest meeting at, it's on Old Torf. And y'all know like East Old Torf, like there's people walking around just You know, they out of there. And so like you walk out and it's just that our context is right there. You can see it. And I think that there was just a lot of questions that for us got answered very like open shut case of just being like, that's not going to be us. Like we have a very different vision. And our church is doing something very different. And while I know that for us that was challenging at times, I do think that, and I hope I should say, that it created a freedom for Juhan or Travis or whoever was coming next to say, hey, the well is not building empire. Empire takes culture, exports culture, and then says, okay, now can you take our culture to the native place and then demand that they become like us? The vision of that I experienced was, hey, can you come and learn how to be a faithful servant of the gospel? And then from there, we'll send you out to adapt and express the church as you would have, as you would want to express it. And that's what we felt from you. That's the support I felt from you. And I'm thankful that we were very different at the outset so that, as like I said, I hope that Juhan, Travis, and anyone else, that we could build a culture of understanding that that's the overall goal of church planting, is not to export empire and culture, but rather to export the truth of the gospel in the various cultural expressions that the gospel comes in the world and even in our cities. And so that's, that's a little bit about the church. And
thank you, bro.
I'm not gonna lie, bro. You getting me excited now. I was just talking. I wasn't trying to spit bars, but now I'm like, am I spitting bars?
Yes, you are.
I might be spitting bars.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
So good. I think that's so good. I think what's just beautiful too, like God has been faithful to that vision. I mean, I think it's incredible that you had like 2 months and then COVID shut down every dream, everything that y'all had been working for, and God had a plan for all of that. But obviously we know, like, you're still here, church is doing well, like you're pursuing Christ. So what are 2 stories of like God's faithfulness to Refuge Church? Outside of COVID, we've hit, you survived.
Yeah.
But like, what are some things that would be encouraging as we as a church even think about like raising people up, this vision of sending, we want exactly what you're saying of like communities to be blessed. That's why we church plant. We cannot meet the context of the people where you're going with who we are, but you can. So what are some...
I think stories of faithfulness, of God's faithfulness. I'm gonna give you one because we all know that my one is equal to others too.
All right.
I'll say that. I'll start by saying this: that I mentioned that 2023 was kind of where we started going like, hey, I think we're in a healthy place to take some steps forward. And I'll say that, and we were talking about this yesterday at the Hill Country thing. I mentioned this stuff yesterday, where our 2024 has actually been where we've looked and been like, wow, this is. We had a pretty crazy stretch in 2024. The church has grown substantially, and then we've seen God just move. We baptized people like 2 out of 3 weeks or 3 out of 4 weeks earlier this year around Easter, and it was just people coming to faith and things that were just awesome, things that were incredible. One of the stories that I'll say that I and it's hard because as a result of that, what I'm saying is that it's hard to pick out 1 or 2 or 3.
Praise
like
God.
We've had multiple times we've been sitting around and been like, this is kind of crazy, right? This is a crazy season right now. And people at our church have been like, it's kind of hard to keep up with everything that's going on.
That's amazing.
But I'll say that I'm going to pick this one just because I think it's the funnest one. And it connects us not just as Refuge, but it connects us to the larger idea of what the church is and what the church's mission is. There was a young man that came in one of those Sundays that we were baptizing people, and he just came through and was like, hey, he walked in, just said, a few weeks ago I renounced shamanism and a bunch of like ancestral practices, and I saw y'all were doing baptisms last night, and I came to get baptized this morning. And obviously, you get that, it's like, we need to talk a little bit, bro. Like, I've never seen you before in my life, big dog. And so, we sat down, we talked about things. We were like, hey, let's get this man baptized. We baptized him. What was cool is the only reason he even knew about the church and even went on our website to even check out if we were doing baptisms or whatnot is because his mom goes to church with another guy at our church's mom in College Station, but they've never met. They don't know each other. And so what ended up happening was his mom had told him about Refuge. He checks out the website. We baptize him. That guy whose moms they go to church together, they're near College Station. He's actually in College Station visiting his mom at that church that morning.
No way.
And so we take a picture of the young man getting baptized, and they send it to the guy in College Station, and he gets to show it to the other guy's mom, who's been praying for him for like several years.
Wow.
And so they had like a beautiful moment over there while we're celebrating what's going on over here, just trying to be faithful, and everyone just trying to faithfully intercede on behalf of this young man. And he's been incredible. Like, there was a joke. Someone made a joke the other day. And they were like, man, this guy goes to everything besides women's ministry, bro. Like, he'd be at everything. And it's just because the Lord has been incredibly working in his life since then. It's been incredible to see how God's working in his life. But that's just one of those stories where we looked up and we're just like, man, that's amazing. Like, it's incredible. And to see how the Lord orchestrates his work, not just with you as your local church. I think that for a lot leaders in particular, we have a narrow scope of how we see things in terms of the Lord working. And it's sometimes, a lot of times it's limited to like our local church. Like, that's what we're focused on oftentimes. So that's what we start looking for God to work in. That's where we start looking for God to work. Yeah. And yet, I think that was an incredible and beautiful moment where we got to just see how God isn't looking at your church and going, okay, I need to take care of Refuge. I need to take care of the well. But we are expressions of his church at large.
Yeah.
Yes,
we work together. We work in symphony. We love the Lord, and we make disciples on his behalf as his under-shepherds, but also as his servants, as his people, as his sons and daughters. And so that was a beautiful invitation into remembering that we're two churches in two different places on the same morning. We're celebrating the same thing because God had moved on this young man's life.
That's awesome.
Not to lift up their church or our church, but to save his son, right, and redeem his son. I think that was one of the coolest moments we've had this year so far.
Ooh,
That's so dope.
Yeah.
that is awesome.
You know, one of the things that you said is like, you're serving in a hard context. And that's just like objectively true. You know, like there are contexts that are easy. I think sometimes though, like people can almost like glorify hardship, you know, where it's like, ooh, dang, like, and you hear just a lot with people's stories. It's like, whoa, wow, crazy, your story. And it's like, you almost begin to like glorify, like even in your own story sometimes, you can like glorify the sin in your life versus like the Lord keeping and the Lord like moving. So I'm gonna ask two questions at once because the reality of it is hard in your context. Like there are issues that you are dealing with that we at the Well would not deal with, or that Juhan or that church up in the suburbs or that this thing like would not deal with. But that's true in the church in the suburbs too. They're dealing with things that you would never deal with, right?
No,
Like
totally.
So that's where I'm like, okay, like I want to ask this.
What do you do with
two
all
ways.
this money? No, I'm just playing.
Exactly.
We don't have that worry. No one's ever asked me that at my church.
Exactly. And so it's like, okay, like how are you seeing the Lord move in the midst of your hardship?
Yeah.
But then also, how do you begin to apply that into people's context? Because I think that sometimes it's like, well, we ain't dealing with homie that's over here, you know, whatever, just got saved, trying to kick his like drug dealing habits. It's like, man, we're over here dealing with frat boy that like just got saved and was drinking too much. But they both have this issue of like spiritual hardship even. And like, so yeah, how are you seeing the Lord move in the midst of yours? How would you even glorify God, I guess I'm saying in the midst of that? But then how do we all apply that? How does the suburban church pastor hearing you apply that?
Yeah. I think there's like 18,000 different ways to answer that. And I'll say that when I think about us, one of the things, I'll just pick what's going on right now and how much I think this is a blessing in the midst of the struggle that is we're experiencing right now, which is that in our context, one of the things that I've seen happening that I think is actually a blessing to our people is that there is a forced diversity that is actually a blessing. And I think that diversity is a tricky word because we use diversity a lot right now, right? You know, post George Floyd, like everybody is aiming at being diverse, but the diversity that you're talking about is actually, that will tell you how challenging or how easy the diversity you're navigating is going to be.
Correct.
Ethnic diversity, as much as I think it's beautiful, it is, for all intents and purposes, in the right context, one of the easier diversities to navigate. We see churches and organizations use ethnic diversity pretty regularly right now. And I think the reason for that is because it's pretty easy for me to say, I want to retain my values, my culture, everything about me I want to keep the same, but I just want to change a white face for a black face.
Exactly.
I just want to change a white face for a brown face.
Exactly.
A white face for an Asian face, or whatever the case is.
Because you're not even really hitting on cultural diversity there.
Exactly.
It's just the color of your skin.
All the values are the same.
But they act the exact same.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
All the values are the same.
Totally agree with that.
The vast majority of the lived experience is the same, bro.
Right.
Like we, you know, let's say I'm using we as if I'm in this situation. Our parents made the same amount of money. There were the same sort of expectations going into undergrad. We had shared experience with professors. We have the same professional struggles and wanting to advance. There may be plights within that are different, but at the same time, all of us in that situation, if I'm a part of that culture, tend to feel that. And I would say I'm a part of that culture. Like I have absolutely, I've been, I think, growing up and understanding and living and seeing kind of more the poverty struggle side. But then as I got older, going to college and X, Y, and Z, I very much found myself interacting almost exclusively with the middle class environment. And so you have that dynamic and it becomes like, okay, that's pretty easy to navigate. Because overall, we may be different ethnicities, but we relate on most levels. I think that what we are finding in our context is that there is a demand on socioeconomic diversity, cultural diversity, that are actually much more challenging. That from what we've seen, they're much more challenging because what's happening in those situations is that you're approaching somebody that has a different skin color than you, maybe. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they are the exact same race as you. But you have a very different, your experience is very different. The way your parents, the support structure is very different. You don't have the same professional struggles. What you are dealing with and what they are dealing with are from pretty much different worlds. And at that point, it becomes, you need to find some overlapping ground where you can connect and be one as brother and sister in faith. But the thing is, you're limited to all the other places that you can do it.
Right.
So now there is a shared reality of I'm a sinner that is in need. I have a world around me that I want to make better. And it's going to happen in different ways. There's different sins that I'm dealing with. There's different needs that I want to meet. But at the same time, I'm sharing this journey with someone who's from a very different place than me, from a very, very different reality than me. But we share that same purpose. We share that same value. We share the value that this individual is a sinner in need of grace and that there's a Redeemer who's come to redeem them. And we share the value that there is a world around us in our own particular little circles, right, that is in need of the hands and feet of that Redeemer that I am called to be. And so finding that type of actual connection, I think is really, 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 really helpful. I oftentimes say at church, or I started saying after a couple weeks ago, that also, implying that to everyone, I would say that doing that and fighting for that type of community is actually incredibly life-giving to your spiritual life.
Straight up.
Because I think the vision you have of Jesus is oftentimes limited to the mosaic you make of Jesus.
Straight up, bro.
If you have a bunch of people that are different, then the gospel is expressed differently in all those people.
Yes.
And if you have different classes socioeconomically that you're interacting with, the gospel is expressed differently in those classes.
Yes.
If you have different cultures, it's expressed differently in those cultures, in the values of those different cultures, and in those different classes, and in those different ethnicities. The more diverse your group is, your friend group, your professional group, whatever the case is, you gain a bigger vision of Jesus because you create a bigger mosaic of Jesus. All these little pieces are coming together to make a picture of him. And when that actually happens, it tends to be that in your most difficult moments, we were talking about this yesterday outside of Hill Country, whatever church that was, Parkway? Anyway, that when it may be that the deepest part of your heart that's in need during the deepest struggle of your life is not going to be answered with the vision of Jesus that you made in only your system, culture, and history.
That's beautiful.
It may be that you needed a vision of Jesus that was from someone that came from a different class, a different struggle, a different experience, and they came in and said, this is the Jesus I know.
Yeah.
Here's the Jesus I know.
Yeah.
And the Jesus I know here is the Jesus you need right now. And that picture, I think, is what I'm looking at, like our landscape as a growing church and the church that came from a lot of middle-class churches that is actually being infused, now with a lot of local community. And I'm getting to see that and be like, I hope that we can build mosaics of Jesus for ourselves that are big and robust and beautiful and answer the deepest needs of our heart with this big picture of Jesus.
So good, bro. That's so good.
Dang.
That's so good.
That is so good. I think one of the things that in my vision and world and hearing of things that has marked Refuge is the way that you love your community so well. The Well has been graciously been gifted to be back on the East Side. We really want to serve our community better. So I kind of want to open the can of worms to give you a moment to preach, to call to us of how can we, as you are like selling in this context, right? Everything you're saying is true. What are some challenges that you can give to us or direction, some application for really growing this kind of heart, how we persevere and endure when we hit challenges of the community as like, we're on the East Side, but we want to do more.
Yeah. I think I would caveat a couple of things with that and say that we're also learning to do that from the perspective that our church is very much so growing in being made up of the community that we serve. Right? That's something that's probably more so taking place in the past year to 6 months, where the beginning was very much again made up of the individuals that were coming from the well, and you know to a degree also in Eastside Community Church and whatnot, and so that's actually we're learning and adapting into that space together as a church now, because our church looks more like our community now. So we're learning that as well. I think the other thing I would say is that when it comes to a motivation or desire, I can only speak from the perspective of someone that's grown up either in or close to the struggle, and that's going to be a different motivation. I don't know what it feels like to necessarily be like, hey, I was raised easy and I want to go outside of myself to help someone else in a different environment than me. I don't know that. And so I can't really speak to what motivates or what would motivate or what needs to motivate a person, because all I know is that I've always had that motive. Before I came to faith, I wanted to go to school to be a speechwriter and my plan was to be a speechwriter for nonprofit organizations that focused on like injustice in like urban communities. That was always my vision of my life. And so in a lot of ways, kind of going back to what we said earlier, we're like, the sending of churches at the well is not exporting culture, but letting the expressions of the gospel exist. This was always kind of going to be my expression of the gospel, because it's always what I was raised in. My dad exposed me, and I don't know if he wants me saying this, but he did. He exposed me to like Malcolm X and MLK Jr. And even low key, he's gonna laugh at this, but even low key, like he introduced me a little bit of Farrakhan when I was like,
that's actually really shocking, really bro.
Yeah,
I'm only saying that because this is I can hold this for a second. It's a derailed conversation, but I want to get back to that. That's really interesting.
Go ahead, bro. Can we do it?
Yeah. It's
I'll
interesting to me because, don't lose that question, because it's important. Challenge the well is what that question is, right? Which I know it's helpful. I think that my perception would have been your dad as not an American. Like, and by the way, most people just listen. Josh is Mexican, and so in case you can't see and don't know that, and so my perception would have been that often you either have immigrants that come in to America and they try to assimilate into, and they almost don't want to. So you don't even know Spanish because literally we're trying to hide it, or they try to maintain like home culture. And there's sort of no, like, it's almost like we're just always like on vacation here almost. So it's really intriguing to me that he would expose you in those ways to that sort of like that struggle even. And then, I mean, just candidly, like Black struggle, y'all being Mexican, like very different. Same, obviously a lot of crossover, but a lot of difference. That's just very intriguing to me, Ron. That's shocking to me.
I think a couple of notes to that is that I think first to clarify, my dad is American, and so I think that one of the things that I would say is that the American, you see this very regularly in Mexican American communities, and I think Latino immigrant communities in general, is that first generation feels that way, and then largely due to the Black advocacy of the civil rights movement in the past several years, in general, decades, that American, there's this line, I was reading the book 1776 by David McCullough. It's about the American Revolution. And in there he says that there was a lot of infighting in the English houses regarding the American Revolution. And one of the things they said was, one of the lords said was, we can't be mad at the Americans. They're only revolting because they're so very British. That's the whole reason we're getting mad at ourselves. We instilled this in them. And I think in a lot of ways, the very real American perspective that's grown and infused into the Black African-American response of saying, this isn't right. Right? That's very American. It's a very American thing to do. To be like, hey,
that's interesting.
No, you can't do me like this. Right?
That's very intriguing, bro.
All of American history is basically this.
Totally.
I think that you get the second, third generation of Latinos that come in, and we infuse into that American spirit very quickly. I think likewise, you take Mexican Americans, Latinos in general. Like I said, I can only speak Mexican Americans. I'm from Texas, so I literally most of my life, if you were like slightly darker skin, black hair, it was like that's a Mexican. Like I went until college, I was like, wait, you're Colombian? I was like, what is that? What is that? So I think that you get into the inner city environments, and you have a lot of cross interaction between black neighborhoods. And even you think about like Austin, the lower half of the east side is Mexican. You get to 7th Street, you go up from Houston Tillis, and that was all historically black. So those neighborhoods are crossing over a lot. And so you have young men and young women who are interacting with one another and sharing ideas. And as a result, they're getting exposed to things, and they're talking about things, and they're sharing characters and X, Y, and Z. And so you see murals of MLK, or you see murals of Cesar Chavez, or whatever the case is. You're exposed to these realities in a very crossover, cross-pollination type of thing. I did say I was a green thumb. And so you have that cross-pollination effect that tends to bring about individuals maybe like me who, that cross-pollination effect for me gave me a deep longing to see justice as I had like these moments where, I'm looking at, let's be honest, Denzel Washington's Malcolm X is like, that's like goated.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there may not be a better movie. And so, like, you have all these experiences, you're interacting with all these thoughts, and so it produces values in you that are unique to those particular dynamics. And that's a part of the reason why, cultures and people are not monoliths, because rural Latino community is not the same as that.
Right.
It oftentimes is very different than that, particularly rural Mexican culture. And so, I would say that I'm a product of that in a lot of ways. And so that influence is very much so ingrained in me. And as a result, that's why early on, I'm smacking away from this mic regularly. Early on, I was like, that was my passion. And as a result, when I came to faith, that was always a part of my vision for what the gospel would do. So when I get to Acts 19 and I see Paul in Ephesus, he's declaring the gospel, and all of a sudden people are throwing their idols and their scrolls into a bonfire and setting them on fire. From my perspective, right, people that are just reading the Bible and interpreting on the literal realities, which is fair and good and necessary to start with, they're seeing that as a spiritual reality. And it is. The spiritual reality of being devoted to pagan gods and converting to the Christian God.
Totally.
That is actually what's happening there. But from the perspective of someone who's come through where I'm coming through and I have the value system that I've built out, I'm likewise seeing all the ways that the gospel can transform a community from addiction, that the way the gospel can transform a community from people being selfish, fathers being selfish and leaving their families and leaving single moms, which again, half of the families in our community, or half of the households with kids in our communities are single moms. I'm seeing those scrolls and I'm seeing those idols because of the influence of, again, culture, diversity, all the things we're talking about. I'm reading that and it's making me go, I wonder if I can see that happen in
That's
these
so
ways.
good.
Yes.
I wonder if I can see that happen in these ways that apply to my context. And I wonder if my communities, right, Hispanic, Black communities largely, right, I wonder if where I feel at home, where I live, I wonder if the gospel can do that here. But we're not exchanging idols of Artemis. We're exchanging idols of self and exchanging idols of indulgence and exchanging idols of selfishness. I wonder if the gospel could do that here, right? And so that's where I'm coming from. Right from the jump because of that childhood. And again, I think that takes place through all the cross-pollination that's happening culturally. That comes from, again, diversity. And so, I'm not advocating for Farrakhan, just by the way. I'm just saying that I saw him a lot when I was little. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. Yes.
That's good. Okay, so give us one more. So go back into what you were...
The challenge for the... And maybe it's even like a shift of like, right now, I feel like the well does not look like the outside environment. So even if there was advice as to like, how have you gotten the community into your church? I know that there's been a lot of prayer for that, a lot of desire for us to include the community in where we are. So, that can also be a part of your challenge for us. Hit us up.
Yeah, I think, so a couple of things. Again, that was a preface in a lot of ways. A long preface.
Great preface.
About, me, and I'm not going to be able to speak. I think I feel ill-equipped to speak to someone that's not deeply connected to the
that
needs
sort of,
that life, that culture, because I'm from that. And so I'm going to have a natural motivation for it that existed prior to my faith. But I do think that we have theological realities that speak to this. And I think a couple of things that I'll say, I first want to say something on a theological end, and then we can say something on a practical end when it comes to like, hey, drawing people in and whatnot. What I would say first on the theological side is that I think that the absence of this desire can take place when the sequence of the gospel seems out of place. What I mean by that is that if we see the gospel as moral exclusively, and so God saves me from my immorality and my failures. And then from there, through my salvation, I am restored to ideas like, I now, because I'm saved, I'm going to read the Bible. Now, because I'm saved, I'm going to help other people. Now, because I'm saved, I'm going to pray, right? These are all things that come as a result of the gospel, as a result of what Jesus has done in my life. And if that's your vision of the gospel, then it's easy to say, hey, I don't have time for that one right now, in the exact same way that I say I don't have time for the Bible right now.
That's so good,
Super
Josh.
easy.
Yeah.
Easy to do that. But if the gospel is something different, and this is where theologically we have this word vocation in theological circles, where the vision of the Bible is that God creates a world, and in Genesis, we see the formation of the functional reality of the world. This is how it's structured. This is what serves what. This is for what purpose we have what. And then from there, the crowning achievement in that creation is God saying, and I'm going to make these people who look like me and share with me a unique connection. That unique connection is one, intimate, but it's two, vocational. One, it's meant to be that they're connected with me specially. I come through and I'm like, man, where's Adam? Where's Eve? I want to spend time with them. I want to be with them the way we want to be with our kids or our friends or whatever the case is. But likewise, there's also this unique role in that being created in God's image. But these are also my servants. These are also the stewards of this great thing that I've made, this good thing that I've made called earth, right? They're the stewards of that. So they're going to go out and they're going to cultural mandate, right? This is in Genesis. This is where we see God say, hey, go out and take dominion. Build, make it beautiful. Ensure that my design for everything that's beautiful stays intact and it becomes beautiful and this incredible place that God always envisioned for creation. I think that when we have the idea of sin, when we limit it to moral, we think we've lost intimacy with God. But when the gospel is only moral, we think that all we gain back is intimacy with God.
Ooh, that's so good.
And I think that when we realize that the gospel, in the story of the Bible, sin doesn't just take away intimacy, but it also takes away vocation. The first several chapters of Genesis are rooted in the idea that we've corrupted. We no longer are we stewarding it toward God's beauty, but we're now corrupting it through sin. And so when we're restored in the gospel, it's not just that we're restored to intimacy with God on a moral level. That's taking place. That's absolutely taking place. But it's likewise that we're restored to God on a vocational level. It's not that the gospel is that you came to faith on a moral level and now you have the option to take care of people. It's that taking care of people is the gospel. It's that going out and serving and loving people is what God is doing when he's saving you. He's not saving you so that you can be with him and optionally be with them. It's not so that he can be with him and optionally take care of the city around you. It's he saves you so that you can become intimate with him again and so that you can be restored to your vocation again. Which was always going to be to steward the world into his beauty. And so if I'm being honest, if that's how we sequence the gospel, if we help people know right from the jump, when you are saved, you're not saved so that you can go and be by yourself with God. This is not something where it's like, hey, you're saved and now, good job. Try to work on the other things. It's you're saved, now restore. Not just that you're being restored. It's that the first step in God's vision of restoration for your city is you. And then from there, you are a mechanism in his restoration process for the world around you. That is the gospel. It's not an option to the gospel. It is the gospel. And so that's what I would say is like if we have a theological structure where we're telling people and making sure they understand God did not come back just so that you can be happy. Just so that your guilt can be absolved. He came back to restore the world. John 3:16 is not for he so loved you. It's that for he so loved all of his. He loved the world. And as a result, he comes back to restore you to not just the moral vision of being intimate with him and absolving guilt and forgiveness, but he restores you that vocation of saying, now your job is restored. So we see this in Colossians and Ephesians, where it's like, hey, right now you're not serving to man anymore. Now you work as unto God again, right? You were serving man, you were serving masters, you were serving yourself. Now though, Now even the servant can find purpose in his work because now the servant is doing what he's doing, is doing what she's doing, and doing it as unto the Father again.
Gosh,
that's the
so
gospel.
good.
There's a restoration of the vocation of God's children. So on a
So
theological
good.
level, I would say
So
that is what I would look and be like, hey, that needs to be infused into like our ministry
Yes.
philosophies.
Yes.
That's so good.
I think as a result, I think that then bleeds into the practical elements of what it feels like to say, hey, come now, let's invite the world around us in.
Yeah.
If we're in a community that is has some poverty in it, I'm not just looking and going, okay, I hope they get saved, but now my philosophy, what I feel called to, what I think God is calling me to, not as an option, but as a fundamental part of my relationship with them is to take care of the world around me. Now it's like, hey, go put that in motion. And I guarantee you that will inevitably create two things. It'll build a better rapport of churches that are probably often middle class and white in neighborhoods that aren't.
Yeah.
It'll build a better rapport for those churches in those communities. And the second thing is the reason that rapport is built is because people are just out there being the exact thing that we said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you an example. My pastoral job 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, was there's a guy at our church, been coming around, the Lord's working in his life, really exciting stuff. But I sat down with him. I took him to lunch. Sat down with him. I have to go pick him up. I have to take him to place. I have to take him back. He don't have a car or nothing like that. So I that's all on me. If I'm like, hey, can you make time in your schedule for me? That's not the way it's gonna work. I'm gonna have to go pursue that man and love that man. So I'll go pick him up. We take him to lunch. He starts telling me about all of the things that he has going on. He got out of jail a while back. He's wrestling with some addiction stuff from his past, but he has some emotional struggles that he feels like are really potentially bringing him back to this place of addiction. All that was working together to make him very feel anxiety in a lot of things. And he has medicine to take care of all these things, but he hasn't been able to get there because he just doesn't have a car.
Right.
As a result, my pastoral job was to drive that man around for 4 hours. That was my pastoral job that week. I knew that's my job today.
Yeah.
And I think that if I think
That was
of
the
myself,
gospel
that was the gospel
that day.
And I think that if I think as a leader, because it starts on the leadership end.
Yeah.
If I think as a leader, my job is to proclaim the gospel. But in proclaiming the gospel, it's I need to tell you that you're sinning, but God has died for you so that you can be forgiven, and that's the end. Then I may not see my job as a pastor, as a proclaimer of the gospel,
Yes.
to be driving that man around for 4 hours.
It's really good.
Right?
Yeah.
And then once you've instilled that reality of like, hey, my job in the gospel is not to just say you're forgiven, but to say Jesus died on the cross, and now you don't have to deal with sin anymore, or you're forgiven of sin. If that's it, like I said, then I'm not motivated in that same way. But once we are, I do think that we can kind of take the initiative and we can begin to say, hey, okay, let's serve people, let's love people, let's live out the gospel. This is the gospel. Me driving this guy around is the gospel. And then once we do that and we come together in doing that, I think that then you start to extend an arm, an olive branch of peace to the people around you and say, hey,
good.
I'm here for you.
Yeah, come
My
on.
vision of the gospel isn't for you to come to get forgiven of your sins. We're all forgiven of our sins. We all just sweep the past under the rug and then we move on and say, hey, everybody's forgiven. But my job
really
is to
good.
bring restoration to the world, and I want to do that. I'm willing to sacrifice for it. I'm willing to give expensive love for it. And so, yeah, I think that if we can get those two things in order, I think that it becomes a little bit more natural. It's not as much of a struggle because it's a little more inherent to the gospel.
It almost becomes
good.
easy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Because you begin to just see really clearly, which is why Paul could see so clearly in every letter that he writes. Y'all need to not be gossiping as much and just start working with your hands and be quiet. Y'all need to actually start giving more regularly because you're rich. Y'all need to, and it's like he can just see because he has this lens. Galatians 2, rebuke computer, not eating with the Gentiles.
Yeah.
Calls it a stain to the, or calls
Exactly,
it,
bro.
That's
you are
good.
not
That's a
practicing the
good
gospel,
example.
Right? Galatians
Exactly.
2:14.
Great.
And so it's like, how does not eating with Gentiles, how is that the gospel?
Yeah.
It's like, because that's the literal reason why Christ came.
Yes.
That's literally why he
Yes.
came, right?
Oh, so
it
good.
is the gospel message, which is why he would combine
That's right.
it in Ephesians.
That's right.
Where he'd say, hey, there is reconciliation between you and God and between you and man.
Yes.
But right in the middle of it is you've been created for these good works that God prepared for you beforehand, that you
That's
might
right.
walk in them. So that narrative that you just shared, the narrative of you are forgiven from your sins, there is issue with you and God, and the narrative of your neighbor is like all woven.
And
It's all woven
into
together. Exactly.
all of Paul's gospel
Absolutely.
messages,
Yes.
right? And so that's
it's
good,
woven
bro.
together in the stories of the gospel. It's woven
It
together
is.
in Jesus' own
Straight up,
work.
straight up,
You know,
straight
like
up.
he's not.
Yeah.
We almost have to manufacture a gospel in which Jesus is coming to say,
That's good, Doc.
your sins are
That's good,
forgiven,
Doc.
and that's what I'm
good,
here
Doc.
for.
That's
Ooh.
good, Doc.
We have to
Yeah.
navigate around the gospels in order to be at a place where it's
So
like,
good.
hey, I came to die because you're guilty so that I could
Yes.
get you with me again.
Yes.
It is almost always a declaration of the kingdom that seems to infuse God's love, grace, and care into the world
everyone.
around, into everyone around him,
Yeah.
and then brings about a new creation from
Yeah,
it.
totally,
Like
bro.
he brings about a new creation by coming in and being not just saying, hey, you're going to be forgiven of your sins, but by infusing the love of God into every aspect of his life to where he cares for people. And Zacchaeus gives all the money back. And people just get up and sin no more. The sin is connected to the vocation, right? They're together in what's happening. And so Jesus' own stories in the Gospels are all littered and fused with this same idea where he's going out and living in a way where he's the steward of God's creation. He is peak man, right? He's peak humanity.
Yeah.
He's showing us how to do it.
Yes.
Yeah,
And in
straight
showing
up.
us how to do it, he's
Yes.
not coming in being like, hey, you're guilty and you need to be forgiven.
Yeah.
Peak humanity is him being like, hey, I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah, straight up.
And now don't sin anymore, right?
I think too
Yeah.
about like
Gosh,
you
that's
almost
good.
have to like only read the book of Romans, right? It's like that's kind of like where, because Romans is a very theological, very, 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 and it's very Western. In fact, it was written to a Western
Yeah.
culture
Yeah.
who already thought with a lot of Western thinking like we do today, which is why you don't see any of that in Corinth. You don't
Yeah.
see any of that
Yeah.
in these other, right?
That's a good
So
point.
it's like you almost have to like just, I wouldn't even say manufacture as much as like cut out,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like you kind of just gotta like, I'm gonna let everything be filtered through the book of Romans as if this is my, anchored foundation by which to translate and understand everything else, rather than being like, no, the gospel of Christ himself, honestly, all of the scriptures themselves
Yeah.
are what my anchor becomes to then read everything else
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah.
Right.
So now Romans does make sense. Ephesians 2, 1 through 10 makes sense in light of 11 through 22, in light of 1 Corinthians or whatever, right? So it's like, yeah, bro, that's just so good, bro. That's so healthy to think through.
That's so good.
Let me ask you this from that, because kind of moving into almost application, we always do like a, okay, so now what? Say, okay, this is all great. So what do we do? Why do we listen to this? Right? What y'all are doing as a church is that directly. I know about y'all's ministry and kind of some of the stuff that you're trying to initiate with the community around you. But like, share with us, like, what are some things you're doing literally practically to enter into that, to infuse the gospel into your world that you're living in? And even like, how can we help? How can we pray? How can we literally help in the midst of that?
I think one thing that I would say is answer this two ways. One is another encouragement, and I think this is healthy, is that we have to have like inventory. I say this is another big preface to something else, is that we have to have like we have to take inventory of our thoughts, take every thought captive. And I think that when we are in a place where if you feel like serving someone and not praying for them is contradicting the gospel, I think you've got it wrong. Right? I think if you're like, hey, if I'm not trying to save you, then this isn't gospel ministry. I think it becomes like, I think you're more in that place of saying, hey, I'll try to find every way to get to the story where Jesus is just about this and ignore the rest of the pages where he's all about the other things.
That's good.
And so on a personal level, I'd look at somebody and say, what now? I'd be like, hey, actively consider the pleasure of God as you simply love and serve other people.
That's good, Doc.
In a simple love and serving other people, you can find the pleasure of God without the deep pressure or guilt of feeling like you're not trying to convert them at that moment. We at Refuge, we use a language when we have three rhythms: we connect with God, grow a family, and serve the city. And to serve the city, we have into all of them we have sub rhythms where it's like, hey, here's how you can do this daily, weekly, and monthly.
Nice.
One of the daily ways we can serve the city is what we call just daily goodness, where it's just like daily wholeness is what it's just like, hey, every day go out there and do something that brings a little bit of wholeness to your community, your job. If it means that you see a piece of trash on the floor, pick it up and throw it away. If you see someone that's struggling, give them something to eat. A lot of people do that, like put crackers in your car and give them out or something like that. whatever the case is, wherever you see something that you have a slight opportunity to just bring wholeness to your community, wholeness to the world around you, do that thing. You don't need at that moment to be like, can I also pray for you? You can. I hope you do, to be fair. But it's just that if you just picked up the piece of trash and put it in the trash can, if you just did that, that's the gospel. The gospel is at work because the kingdom is making a better and restoring the world, and you're a part of that. And so do that. And if we can get everyone to do that,
right?
One, there can be no more trash. Okay. Two, like people will actively go, the church is caring for the world.
Yeah.
Right. God's caring for the world through the people that He's called His own. Now, we do that to different levels, and on an organizational level at Refuge, we recently started something called Family Advocacy Movement. That's like one of the things that we're passionate about. And so Family Advocacy Movement is aimed at caring for families in order to change the trajectory of a family's, life, right? As I mentioned before, we have a lot of issues in our community socially with things like, addiction and whatnot. And single parent homes are one of the biggest ones. Like, we have a lot of people that just be struggling with that across the board in terms of like the 4-4 Dove Springs. And so what Family Advocacy Movement is our effort to intercede on behalf of families, not at the point of everything popping off. What is it called? When it's like a point of crisis, but rather trying to intersect families before that point to change trajectory so that they never get to crisis. And so what it is we approach it from what we call like a FCC model, which is like we have a volunteer who's a friend, and that's someone that generally just connects with the family, gets involved with them, starts to serve them, love them. They are utilizing some resources that are from the United Way to try and connect families to local resources that try to help them meet needs and stuff like that. A coach who, in essence, comes in and says, hey, let's try to get your life going in a certain direction. What can we do? What do you see for your future? Where are you going? And then we subsidize counseling costs in the event that a lot of the families that we have, sometimes they're struggling to move forward because they're stuck where they're at. And I don't mean that from the simple place of saying, hey, we got to talk about every single little thing. I think what I'm trying to get at is that stuck where they're at is meaning like they may be in the midst of trauma. They may have experienced trauma in a way that prevents them from moving forward. And so counseling is not something we're going, hey, we want to subsidize counseling costs because we think you should be in counseling your whole life, but that we want you to be in counseling for a period so that you can take the steps forward that you need. We want you to get over the things that you've gone through, things that are tragic at times, things that are hard, so that you can actively take the steps forward that we want you to take forward. And so that's kind of the whole aim of the ministry. And so right now, it's a ministry at our church. We have a long-term vision of starting a 501c3 and then kind of moving forward from there so that we can gain a little bit more independence in finances and fundraising and stuff like that. But right now, it's just starting at our church plant, and so it's kind of it is in the don't despise humble beginnings. I gotta say, what's funny about this, bro, is that I wrote like a big ministry plan, and I'm okay at writing a ministry plan. I can organizationally put some things together, but it painted a big idea that was just like, it was all things where I could send to you and you would have been like, I don't know if we can do all this, bro. This is kind of ridiculous. It was really big. And I want to shout out like huge parts of our church that came in to help me say, hey, let's get this to a point where we can do it today, right? From that point, one of the phrases that I've been using for people and for myself a lot is that idealism is either the origin of impact or pain. Like when you implement ideals that are just so pure, like they're so big, they're 38 years from now, and you demand that they would actually be done exactly how you see them today, it'll be painful and disappointing.
That's good.
But if you can actually be compromising and just fight for what you can to be impactful, not to be ideal,
that's good.
then you'll end up being
really
impactful
good.
today.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
so that's kind of where we're
really
at.
good.
Like we're starting today, right? It's like, hey, how can I do this today? And that the FCC approach for us is how we can get started today. And so we're actively looking for people to get involved in serving in one of those classes. You obviously can't be a counselor unless you're a counselor.
Right. Makes sense.
For real?
It's good guard.
If you want to participate in the coaching, we're trying to work toward next year starting like a pay structure for the coaching role to kind of cover some costs for them and whatnot. And then the friend role is a volunteer role for us, kind of from foreseeable future. And then so we're doing that right now. We want people to get involved in those two roles, the friend role and the coaching role. And then we're also just looking for people to give to what we're doing. Like, again, a lot of what we're doing in terms of like wanting to create coaches that are motivated to actually help people. Like, we're living in reality. I could tell people to volunteer to do that. Or I could tell them, if you do this and we see some things happen at the end of 6 months, I'll pay you for it, is a much more incentivizing program for people. It's an incentive in the real world, all right?
Yes.
I know that in our Christian world, we'd be like, oh, serve the Lord. But in the real world, we have to be like, hey, I want you to coach them. And if you coach them well and you give it your all, I'll pay you. And then for the counseling costs as well. And then for like some household stuff that we have set aside to say, hey, if we need emergency help, that type of thing. And so we have what I think we went to a event in Colorado a while back to help that was meant to serve and help ministries that are building programs like ours. And they said, one of the things they said was like, the best thing that you can do is approach it with the reality that love is expensive and that loving people the way you want to love people is expensive. And if you want to do it to the best of your abilities, it's going to be expensive. And so right now we currently have more people interested in being a part of the program in terms of families that want to get involved than we have money or people to do it at the moment, which is encouraging for us. But at the same time, that's what we're hoping to do right now. We're started some trainings at the beginning of summer. So we have some trainings going on for a couple of the roles, but we're looking for people that would just get involved with being one of those two roles, a friend or a coach, and then people that would be willing and interested in investing in what we're doing to kind of see that happen. Like I said, the feedback that we've gotten from people that are the families that want to get involved, man, I'm more excited about that than anything else, if I'm being honest, because what they're saying, when they're saying I'm interested in this, I want to apply for this, how do I do that? They're not applying for something where they're saying, hey, you're telling me that you can give me a bunch of free stuff, right? Right. That's not what they're doing. Because the vision that we're pitching is not, we'll give you a bunch of free stuff.
You gotta do some work.
Right.
Yeah, it's, hey,
let's get out of this.
We think that you can build a better life for yourself with a little bit of help.
It's beautiful.
I'm not going to give you a bunch of free stuff. I'm going to teach you how to fish, and then I want to give you a pole, and I want to send you out there to build a life for yourself. And I think that right there, the fact that people have responded to that makes me more excited than anything else, if I'm being honest.
Straight up.
And so, yeah, man, that's kind of
so
what we're
good.
doing. And that is, I think, these types of ministries are what I think is produced on the long throw of like the theological stuff that we're talking about, practical stuff we're talking about. They bleed into, I think, stuff like what we're doing with that.
It's interesting, even as you were talking, I was thinking about 1 Timothy 5, where, Paul's instructing Timothy on doctrine, which matters, on gospel stuff, right, which matters, on church structure, elders, deacons, whatever. Like, there's a bunch of instruction. And then he goes into this it starts in chapter 5, verse 3, and it lasts all the way through chapter 5, verse 16. So a really big portion of his letter is about how Timothy is supposed to care for widows. That was the service need that was established in that church at that time, in Ephesus, right? And it's like, man, that was the need where this is where the gospel plays out. He doesn't actually give any other tactical, tangible things in 1 Timothy, at least, to tackle in those sorts of ways. The rest of them are church structure, theological. They're all like, here's how you do this. Here's how you don't get false teachers. Here's how, tell the rich to be doing this. Like, none of it is like, this is it. And he goes into a bunch of different things, and I'm about to tie it to what you're doing, but it's like, hey, like, honor widows who are truly widows. So, like, that's interesting, because he then goes into some of these widows, they ain't really widows. Ain't that so what?
Interesting.
They've lost their husband, most likely, because men probably could have worked for themselves again. It was women he was talking about here in this context. They lost their husband, but, like, they ain't really widows. They over here gossiping, they doing this, they doing all this. Like, they're not. But, like, the true widows, like the ones that really have need, like, honor them. So he goes on to define what a true widow is. Here's what a widow is, and here's what it is in our context. Now look for the ones that have been blessing the household of God, right? And then he starts saying things like, let her be enrolled. So it's like, okay, so there was some program that either Paul had set up or Timothy had set up or somebody set up somewhere where you had to, like, enroll in it and make sure she's at least 60, do this, do that. Why? dog, this is a church. This is a human. This is a real life thing, right? They ain't got endless amounts of money. They can't just be giving it to all the widows. That Paul's getting extremely tactical in this like need, in this gospel need in this community. And he's like, here's how we address it to really honor those who, and it's really intriguing. At the very end of it, he literally essentially just says, hey, if you care for these women well, like they'll pray. And that was it. That was the only reward.
That's your ROI.
Right? Now, if prayer is a bad ROI, then you're kind of doing a lot for. But if prayer is what literally starts gospel movements or protects gospel movements or sustains gospel, then this is one of the most important works you could be doing because of what happens. And I know your story enough to even interweave my story here. It's like, yo, like the people who were helping my mom get through, single mom with 3 kids in the hood, no money, deep poverty, never made over $20,000 a year when I was growing up. It's like, yo, the people that stepped in to help, they don't know we're doing this podcast right now.
That's right.
They have no idea. They will.
Yeah.
They will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the kingdom will come.
Yeah.
You know, and they will be rewarded for that. So even if there's no prayer reward, like even if there's no, it's like, no. Like the kingdom will advance when you do kingdom-like things,
That's right.
you know?
Yes.
And so just really candidly, I'll say this even, Josh hit me up, was like, hey, can the well get, where y'all at with finances? And I was like, hey, no, we can't give. Here's where our financial structure is. And if y'all ever want to come to the business meeting, if you ever want to learn more about that.
Yes.
But it's like, no, we literally plant for this very sake.
Yes.
We put aside, some dude who I really respect who like plants aggressively and is awesome was like, man, we set aside like 3%. I'm like, 3% to
That's
plant? How do you
nothing.
plant somebody like that? Oh, it's because y'all got more money than us. That's
Yeah.
how.
Okay.
Because that's a big 3%.
That's a
You know what I mean?
big 3%, yeah.
Percentages work on what you basing the percentage
Big
off
3%.
of.
That's so true.
Exactly.
That is so true.
We set aside 15% to church plant. That's part of the Wells budget. I would love to take 15% more for staffing and stuff like that. But it's like, no, this is what we do, which then limits us into literally places like this. But I told Josh, like, bro, come on the podcast, share what you're doing because we want to, one, help a literal church plant of ours, but then also even initiate, motivate our people towards service, towards gospel work in this way.
Yes.
And so, like, if you're listening, you're like, yo, that's dope. Like, I love that. Like, Josh just gave it, and we'll put links and show notes and stuff like that to where you can get more information about this.
FamAustin.com because I
go.
went and got
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did. I went and found it aggressively.
I'm surprised some church ain't have that.
I was too, bro. I looked it up and I was like, surely.
The Lord has ordained it for you.
And then I looked up there, GoDaddy was like 99 cents. And I was like, yes, you're right. You're right, 99 cents.
Shoot.
And every time I log on GoDaddy now, it's like, if you want to put it up for sale, it could probably get this much. And I'm like, I'm good for now.
That's how you get your grant money for you. You sell Fam Austin for
We moved it
$100,000.
to FamAustin01.com.
Straight up.
But we're doing pretty good in the ministry right now. Right?
Oh, how funny.
Like, go check it out. Go check it. You just heard that. It'll be in the show notes as well. But, like, give to it, serve in it, because it is a way to play
Pray
out the gospel.
for it.
That's what's up.
Pray
Yeah,
for it.
Please
for
pray
real.
for it.
Yeah.
Let's end with this because we stretching this out, and I know y'all.
Yeah,
y'all
we
be
fine.
listening. How can we pray for you as Josh? How can we pray for you as Refuge in this season?
No, that wasn't in the notes. No, I was just saying.
How can we pray for you in this season? Question,
I
Refuge
ain't touched
question.
that.
Oh,
Okay, so no, I appreciate you. There we go.
I was like, wait a second.
Mary out here trying to get me, bro. You see that?
I was trying to get him. I was like, what are you talking about?
Oh man!
Did you not send that?
I think that on a personal level, I think that we are really just in the thick of life. I think similar to this, I was laughing because when we were talking, I want to say that those podcasts was really cool. Like, obviously, y'all just started, not just started, but y'all started those recently. And the podcast is super cool. But prior to you even sending me that email or that text being like, you want to come on the podcast? I was like, well, what podcast? And it's not because you're not invested or care about things. It's because as a lead pastor, your life, it's not just that your time gets busy. That's true too. But I think that it's more so than anything that you're your radar kind of narrows into
no
your
doubt.
community
No doubt.
and what's happening there. It's more that than anything else. And I think that in my life we have like 4 things our family is just like focused on, like, church, kids, and a couple other things. And so we are just in the throes of life. We have a 6-year-old, one who's going to be 5, and an 18-month-old. And so like kind of just that aggressive sort of stage where the kids are always like, I need something. As we are in essence like cultivating and stewarding another baby in our church. And then from there, what I'm gonna lace in, like on a personal level and the church side, is that, and then we're trying to actively take steps to care for people in this one. Right? Is that like we're not saying, hey, well, we just need to make some friends and bring them into our life and have a good time and make sure people feel loved. It's that, hey, we're trying to bring this baby in the refuge. We're trying to mobilize it to do more things. And so there's a demand there that is pretty consistent, not just in our family advocacy movement thing, but also in the other ministries that we're trying to work on. We have some recovery stuff that we're trying to start and stuff like that. And so it creates a sort of chaos where just in the church planting kind of phase in general, you have those random times where it's like, hey, can we do this at our house tonight? Because this fell through or that fell through or this whatever happens. And then my wife is like, she's all tired. She's like, I'll start cleaning. And it's like while she's cleaning, our 18-month-old just throwing food on the ground, and I'm looking at him like, bro.
Come on.
I'm gonna fight you, bro. Like, I'm gonna actively fight you. And so, like, all that I think is just the normal rigors of church planting. I think that we're just in the middle of that. And so, yeah, man, I think that is kind of what I would say for us. And then on the church level is that we are, we're a mobile church, I feel like, in more ways than one, in the sense that we're mobile because we meet in a school, but likewise, because we're actively trying to, like, go extend outside of ourselves. And and at a church our age, when I would meet church planters and tell them, here's what we're doing, it just is not as common when I'm talking to other friends, because they're in the stage of what they feel like is building a foundation. And maybe this is the way to go. I don't know. We'll find out in a few years. But they're building a foundation, and then from there, they're like, hey, off a good foundation, we'll try to do some other things. Yeah. And it feels like we're kind of like, no, we're going to infuse the other things into our foundation, because that's what I believe the gospel is. And so it's that idea where with the church, that's what I would say, is that we're young and growing and still very fresh, again, coming off of what I said earlier with the timeline of COVID, and really feeling like we're up and going now. But we're kind of in the midst of that, not being like, let's just kind of make sure everything's good and build a good foundation. We're like, hey, let's go. Like, let's go do some stuff now. So I think that both of them fit into almost the same kind of prayer request, but that's how I would try to describe it. I love that. And invite prayer for us in that way. I love that.
Yeah. Hey, I would love to literally invite prayer. I would love for you to pray over Josh. Let me say one thing to you before you pray. That was a frequent feeling for me where it'd be like, oh, I think you're supposed to do this first and then go do that. That's what all the wisdom tells me. That's what all the book, that's what other pastors that are doing this seems like they're doing. And it seems like, bro, do what God's telling you to do. Like, we were not supposed to bring you onto our staff, bro. We were 120 when we were talking.
That's facts.
And I was like, everything says you got to wait till 200 before you even think about planting. And the Lord said, no, go. And it's like, and then he blessed that. Right when you left, all of a sudden it's like, hey, here you go, by the way. Like, here's this. And I can name 50 stories like that, bro. Do what God's telling you to do, and he'll bless that.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's pray. Merciful God, I just thank you for our brother. I thank you for our friend and for the ways that you have gifted and guided, sustained, the ways that you have cultivated a love of the fullness of your gospel to change the world around him, to change the hearts of your people, to join in the restoration that you have called us to, for the privilege of getting to be a part of that. And so, man, I just pray an immense favor and blessing over his life right now, of his personal life, as he is in the thick of life with crazy kids and trying to do things at church, and you're guiding and directing him and calling him to so many things. God, would there be an immense dependence on you when kids are throwing food on the floor? Would the first thought be to look to you and be like, all right, well, you're here with me, because, man, I know that feeling too. But yeah, would there just be such an intimacy that his life is marked by an overflow, that his family's life is marked by an overflow of encounters with you. And so would you give him clarity and wisdom as he pours into his family at home? Would you continue to guide him in the ways that you are leading Refuge Church, that culture or wisdom or guidance of this world does not hold the weight that your word does in his life? And so when things seem fearful or confusing or just out of left field, Holy Spirit, would you bring strong conviction so that your world is transformed because of this man and his church's faithfulness? And so I pray and thank you for the encouragement that he was today. For me, just personally, I pray that that's true for all of us who are listening, of this renewal of the gospel in our hearts as we see a church love your people, not love themselves, not love the gifts that you have given to us, but they have a heart and a love for your people and are willing to put that into action. And so, God, would you allow this massive vision to come to fruition? As there has been a give and a take to let things happen now, would you bless and honor that faithfulness? To say, no, we're not going to wait. We're going to act, and we're going to trust that you'll bring this to fruition. And so, God, I ask boldly that you would bring it to fruition, that it would be bigger and it would be more impactful than they could even imagine. And so would you provide people who are willing to be friends to the people in this community? Would you provide people with the skills and the heart and the gifting to coach them, to be with them, not just for a season, but man, I pray for lasting relationships that display your lasting love for us. And God, I even pray for counselors who may be willing to just donate their services to cut costs. Would you call people in this moment? Would you transform their hearts to have a love for your people in this way? Would you provide finances? Would you stir in people's hearts to generously worship you through this endeavor, through FAM? And God, would we just see you move in beautiful ways as you have promised to restore and to bring the kingdom as it is in heaven here on earth. And so thank you for our friend. Thank you for this time. God, we look to you. We're excited for the ways that you promise to move. Thank you for saving us. Thank you for restoring our vocation. Would we respond? Would we respond in worship? Would we respond in movement? Because we love you and it is right. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Dog. We love you, bro.
Thank you. We do.
Everything you said was well said.
It sure was.
We like it. We love y'all. See y'all next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, like, subscribe, and share. For more information, visit our website at www.thewellaustin.com/podcast.